In. Now, it's the humbling of a giant. World Cup host Brazil tonight suffered one of the most humiliating defeats in World Cup history, crashing out of the semi-final by 7-1. What's worse, in front of their own fans. The BBC South America correspondent Wira Davis is in Rio. Wira, how are the commiserations going?
Well, words like humiliation and embarrassment, Laura, are the ones being put around here now. This is one of the big fan fests in Rio where thousands of people had come expecting the inevitable march towards the final. Only the second time, of course, the World Cup has been held in Brazil. The last time they were humiliated, they didn't expect to be humiliated this time, losing 7-1 to an all-powerful Germany side. A lot of people were leaving here at half-time. They were leaving the stadium in Belo Horizonte at half-time. And the inquest will start tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be resignations. The big question is what kind of anger there'll be. Remember, this had been an unpopular World Cup to start with. That unpopularity had given way to outpourings of public happiness as Brazil progressed through the tournament. But this will come as a huge humiliation tonight in a country, of course, where football means so much.
Wira, thank you very much. Well, we're joined in the studio by Matthew Syed, the Times sports columnist. Goodness me! What will happen next?
Well, I think it is the most graphic capitulation I have ever seen in sport. When you consider the enormity of the occasion, the amount of money that Brazil had invested in the stadiums, the amount of emotional investment of a football-mad people for a sport that they absolutely love. And it wasn't just the scoreline. It was the manner of the defeat. It was a psychological capitulation. There were passages in that first half where there was a complete abdication of technique, tactics and strategy. And I think that this will hurt for a very long time. I mean, Brazilians often interpret the world through sporting iconography in the way that we think of '66, not because of Harold Wilson winning a general election, but because of our World Cup triumph. 2014 will always be remembered in Brazil for probably a moment of the most graphic humiliation.
And do you think it will change the way that the rest of the world looks at the World Cup, in fact? I mean, for Brazil, it's such a huge event, big pressure on them to do well. Will it change all that?
I don't think it will change the way we think of the World Cup. I mean, I think it's part of the rich and vivid tapestry of sport. You get these dramatic results, you get these very interesting narratives. So I don't think it'll change the World Cup, but I think it may change the way Brazil thinks of itself. I mean, perhaps wrongly, often football is held up by football-mad nations as a barometer of the self-esteem of the nation. And Brazil will find it very difficult, even though they have much bigger challenges than what's gone wrong in football, economically, socially, economic division. I think this will really hurt, and it may lead to a very deep, elongated and rather difficult post-mortem.
Because indeed for Brazil, this has already been in many ways, the World Cup, quite an unhappy episode. Riots, demonstrations, huge pressure on the government, but for caring about football and being willing to spend so much money on an event like this.
I think that's true. I think since it started, however, it has been a real carnival. I mean, a lot of people who are there have been struck by the adoration that there is for football, and they've been terrific hosts. I think there's been less affection for the Brazilian team, who haven't played the beautiful game. They've been rather cynical, rather aggressive, and I don't think people will mourn the disappearance of that particular team. But I think a lot of us, and I really felt this watching on the box at home, I felt terribly sorry for the people who wanted it so much. They rather joyfully started olaying the Germans in the second half. I mean, there was a certain amount of gallows humour, which I rather admire, but there'll be a lot of very tearful people in Brazil today.
Indeed, as Wira was reporting, Brazilian fans leaving at half-time. Now, that's completely incongruous with the image of Brazilian football and how much the sport is loved in Latin America.
And I think that's a real indication of how woeful the first half was. I mean, you very rarely get to the half-time of any football match where hope has completely dissipated. I mean, they were obliterated in the first half. There was a very unusual sense in the second half that the Germans were somewhat apologetic.
Sorry for beating them so badly.
So badly that they could almost, even though sport is very Darwinian, it's very brutal, there was a sense that they wanted the Brazilians to do a bit better. And I think maybe the Germans, oddly, almost paradoxically, will take some comfort in the fact that Brazil at least got a goal towards the end of that second half.
So at least they won't be feeling guilty about it. This will be poured over for many days, of course, by commentators in the papers. But in your view, having watched the match tonight, what was it that actually went so badly wrong?
Every now and again, there is what is sometimes called in sport a psychological contagion. You get it in batting collapses. 1, 2, 3 wickets go down, and then the fourth person who comes in is already in a state of panic before they face the first ball. And there was a really vivid sense of that happening after the second goal. They didn't know what they were doing. They'd lost all sense of the strategic importance of where the ball was on the pitch. And that, I think, was the collapse that made it so humiliating.
Matthew, thanks very much. Well, we can just have a very brief word from Rio, from Alex Bellos, who's Pele's ghostwriter for his biography. Alex, what will Pele be thinking tonight?
What will Pele be thinking? Well, he will be devastated, like all of Brazil is. As you can see, I'm here at the Copacabana beach. It is raining cats and dogs, and the sort of feeling of misery and rain and grimness is really everywhere. I mean, I think people here, rather than being angry yet, are just completely shocked. And they were upset at the first few goals, but in the second half, so there's Germany's 6th goal, they were laughing, but by the 7th goal, they were actually cheering. There's this idea that, you know, what else is there to do but to cheer, a fantastic German side?
And Alex, briefly, what do you think the response will be from the Brazilians in the coming days in terms of their football team? How will they put things back together?
Well, there's going to have to be, some grassroots change, but essentially what's happened here today is this feeling that the nation, which was the nation of the beautiful game, that this is dead. I've been just asking a few people on the street and saying, what are you feeling? They're just saying, it's gone, it's gone. This magic that this country used to have has just gone. And that is the feeling. So football here is more than just a game of sports. People will be thinking, as a nation, we're somehow defeated, somehow in what we are, what we're trying to do. And that is what's going to be tough. Brazilians tend to remember the defeats more than the victory, and this defeat today will be remembered for decades.
Alex Bellos, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I think literally from Copacabana Beach, strange things have happened today. Brazil just haven't lost 7-1. It's also raining in Rio. Now, over on BBC One.